Everybody, Norm over here, and welcome to the Norm's Rare Guitars podcast. I'm here with my good friend, who I always try to refer to as my nephew. I've known Joe Bonamassa since he was 12 years old, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. And I love the guy. I love his family. I think he's the greatest blues guitar player and rock and blues guitar player that ever lived at this point. And I'm not saying this, no, I mean it. I've heard you, and I don't think there's anybody that could really even hold your guitar. I'm not saying this because, I'm not trying to blow smoke. I mean, the guy, he can prove it, and if you go see him live, he does it every time he plays live. So it's just astounding. The band is great. And my buddy Nick Dias over here, so is my sidekick.
Hi, I've never actually heard blushing on a podcast before, but I just heard it then.
You know. Speaking of that, this notion of a lot of times now, people come up to me just randomly and say, "I just saw your uncle." I'm like, who? Norm. I'm like,
Norm.
I go, we're theoretically related, but
yeah, it's not a blood relative, but
exactly.
I've known him for so long.
So long.
Joe, how did I meet you? Tell the story real quick, because it's kind of cool.
I came out here around 1990 to do a show on ABC television. It was called Into the Night with Rick Dees. And for those not familiar with Rick Dees is a very famous radio personality, and they gave him a late night talk show. And the house band was Billy Vera and the Beaters.
Cool band. I know Billy. He's great.
And part of this thing, they brought me out to be part of a skit, which was somehow Rick Dees was hard up for a guitar player, and there was no quote-unquote guitar players. So they had to
hire a kid.
So they had to go into the audience, and everybody raised their hand who wanted their shot on television. Of course, they picked me, and they had my guitar there, and we did this rousing version of Johnny Be Good. And a couple of things. There was a lot of firsts on that trip. First time to California, first time in Los Angeles, first time I figured out what union scale was. So I got $589 for my appearance, because I spoke a word, and they gave me more. That's why I'm chatty, especially on TV.
There you go.
And it was the first time we did the guitar shops, and we were told if you're going to go to any guitar shop in town, you have to go out to, I believe you were in a different location.
In Reseda.
And we went out to Reseda, and we went to Norm's Rare Guitars for the very first time. And me being a kid full of ego, and nothing's changed in 30 years, somehow we had 8x10s with us. Little Smokin' Joe Bonamassa.
I still have that picture that you signed to me.
It's in the store.
I signed a picture to you, and it was just one of the things, like, I was from upstate New York, and we had a couple local music shops, but I never saw a Blackguard Telly or any of this stuff. I was so into tweed amps. I was so into Fender Strats and old Gibson Les Pauls.
And that little store, they were just piled up in piles.
Right, they were piles.
Yeah.
And it was like this, and you were very generous. I remember you were very generous because I'm just a kid, and I'm poking around very expensive guitars. They were expensive back then. Oh. And they've never been cheap. And you were just like, yes, pay whatever you want. And it was the first experience I had, actually a tactile experience that I had playing the stuff. And little I know that those formative years and that experience coming out here would subsequently cost me millions and millions and millions.
Oh, let's not exaggerate now. Yeah, but no, maybe not.
That's where one of the things I always like about your videos that you do at the store is you're happy to hand a six-figure guitar to a 12-year-old kid, because what it does is it plants that seed in them, and they go, I want to be around this. I want to, and it's just a guitar, and they're playing it, and I'm just here to tell you, 30 years later, you remember those moments, and it just seems like matter of fact at the time, but at least for a guy like me, the fact that I was able to play them and plug them into something, it planted the seed that I'm still operating the same way today.
Right. And that was actually something that just happened off camera. We were talking about the fact that you will take out your bursts and play them in open water in all kinds of weather conditions.
I gotta tell this story.
Yeah.
I go on the Joe Bonamassa blues cruise, and Joe plays out on stage, middle of the ocean. It's one of the most beautiful experiences ever. It really is, and you always manage to have some of the greatest talent along with you on that. There's like 20 acts. Every one of them is fantastic because you have your finger on all of it. But in the meantime, we're standing outside and under the stars, and the boat's rocking a bit, and Joe's playing a Sunburst Les Paul. You know,
I was playing
probably
spot.
Probably $250,000 or
more
guitar. Yeah. So it starts to rain. And I'm looking at Joe, and I'm going, I can't believe he's still playing this guitar. Were you nuts? And Joe did the whole set, and with the guitar, and he came off, and I was standing by the side of the stage. I said, Joe, are you crazy? You're playing a real Sunburst Les Paul in the rain. And Joe goes, see all these people? They paid to see me. I want to give them the best that I got.
Absolutely.
And that was it.
And, you know, I was monitoring that because Mike had the spare. And it wasn't pouring. It was kind of just sprinkling as it does sometimes on these cruises, and it was one. I kept looking down, and you see a few water droplets, and it's being like, that's fine. One of the things about carrying old guitars on the road is, you know, we're never haphazard or reckless with them, but you also can't. You have to play them. They can't play you.
Yeah.
You know, you can't look down and go, oh my God. You know, I remember the very first Sunburst Les Paul I bought. I thought it was crazy. And I have this thing, and my friend Elliot let me pay it off on time. I'm like, I'm absolutely nuts. And somebody told me, said, hey, listen, you know, I see you're playing that, but every scratch that you put on the guitar takes $1,000 from the value. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. And then I look down and I go, if I put 165 scratches on this guitar,
The guitar's free.
Is it worth nothing? You know. And then I said, you know what? I've never broken a reissue. I've never really scratched. I'm kind of easy on guitars in the sense I don't.
You're not going to start mistreating.
I haven't mistreated the stuff I used to play. Why would I start mistreating him now? And it totally relaxed me because up until that point, I felt that the burst was, or the guitar itself was playing me, and I wasn't playing it.
Yeah.
And then once you get your head around it, like, you know, there's a guitar I showed you today I bought from Martha Reed.
Gorgeous.
Pretty incredible. Martha Reeves?
Martha Reed. And
Okay.
and the guitar, you know, I showed you today. Now that's a guitar as a responsible collector that doesn't need to see any road use. The color is perfect. It's generally mint minus condition. There's only one little ding on it, and like if I brought that out and wore the studded belt and you know, then the whole concept of custodianship gets thrown out the window. You know, and it's like I don't have that ego as a player to go, well, it's my guitar, I can do whatever I want. I have a responsibility when you agree to buy something that preserved to hopefully the next generation that have it
keep it in that condition.
Yeah. Now, do I enjoy it while I play it in the studio? Absolutely. Do I mess around with it at home? Absolutely. But as far as that doesn't need to be played. There's other guitars.
That's the thing. You straddle both worlds because you are a collector, but you're a player as well. And you know, like you said, your audience deserves to hear these fantastic guitars that you get to caretake.
There's a few guitars I'm scared of. Like I don't even break them out. The Black Burst, which is the factory black 60 standard. The brown 55 Les Paul that was made for CMI in Chicago for a trade show, and it's listed in the ledger as Viceroy Brown, or there's one that was listed. It was 5 guitars they made Copper Mist, so it's either the Copper Mist one or the Viceroy Brown. And the one that you wouldn't go, okay, those are one-off custom colored Gibsons, which are rare. The other guitar that I cannot, I'm scared of it because it's so mint and perfect, is the other guitar that I bought from you the day I got Amos.
Yep.
Which is a 1966 Tuxedo Fender Telecaster, Olympic white with black binding. And every time I break that thing out, because it's beautiful, I just find myself, I get uptight and nervous because it's so mint and it's so rare to find those. And I just put it back in the case. I'm literally scared of the guitar. And not a lot of people know that there's a famous picture now of I'm sitting there. It was a couple days after we played the Greek with the Three Kings tour, and we went out to your secret stash, and we got Amos, and there's another case. Everybody always asks, what's in the other case? And it's that tuxedo.
Yeah, the telly.
Because I figure, you were like, it was one of those moments like, what's in here? And you're like, oh, I don't know. There's a tuxedo. I'm like, great. You know, and it was one of those days. It was just, you know, so those are the three that I'm fearful of, you know. And then some of the mint stuff I don't really play a lot. But, you know, I bring the Amos goes on the road, bring the real stuff.
Out of your collection, what percentage would you call mint?
I would say at this point, 85, 90.
Yeah. He's a connoisseur. He's got very good taste. He's buying art.
I basically have 35 what I would call road guitars in rotation.
Yeah.
It's a Whitman sampler of Strats, Tellys, 335s.
You have enough to draw on to keep you
alive.
alive.
And what I try to do is I try to rotate in and out every tour, just so the fans get a different show. I mean, they love to see the Skinner
and
burst.
Probably keep yourself interested as well.
Yeah, right? and it brings something else on. They love to see the Skinner burst. The fans like Guitar Now. Johnny B, which is a 60 Les Paul that has a plaque that says Johnny B on it.
The Johnny B.
My favorite question about that guitar is how'd you get the name Johnny B? I'm like, it says it right on the guitar, man. And it's like, so anyway, so I have about 35 out of the 400 guitars that I have, approximately 400. I have 35 in rotation, and I have I would say 85 to 90% of it is what I would consider mint. And now, but then here's the other thing, Nick, is there's definitions of the word mint.
Mint.
There's norm mint, which means new.
Yeah.
Then there's
Time
other
capsule.
people's definition of mint, and they go, it's mint for its age. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Mint is mint, and it's one of those things where it's like everybody grades their guitars differently. I tend to like downgrade my guitars in the sense, just from my own personal mind.
We do too. Yeah.
Because it's if on a rare occasion, something I sell off a few just to fund behavior like I showed you, because it's a lot of money for these things. I always tell people, they always say, it's an 8.5.
Yeah.
And they'll go, and they get it, that's a lot cleaner than I thought. I go, that's my 8.5.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
To others,
that's what we
that'll be 9.5.
Well, then they're not disappointed.
They're not disappointed. And one of the things about guitar collecting of anything, is I had an instance where I rushed in and I bought what I thought was an original Sparkle P bass. And I remember speaking to you about it, but I was trying to authenticate with photos and blah, blah, and I had it in hand, and I don't know much about Sparkle finishes.
Yeah.
And
nobody does.
It's unless you have a picture of an old man in black and white, it's dicey.
Yeah.
And I remember, so I paid good money for this thing. And I took it down to Songbird's museum, which they have a lot of Sparkle stuff. I said, well, where are you going to go see 10, 15 of them at the same time? These guys got them. So I went down and I showed Dave Davidson. And I said, Dave, you're not going to hurt my feelings either way. I said, do I have a $15,000 bass or do I have a $5,000 bass? And he goes, Joe, let me buy you lunch. and we can talk about your $5,000 bass. And I go, fair enough.
Yeah.
So I was going to hang it on the wall, and I was like, lesson learned. I hung it on the wall in Nashville, and I'm looking at it, and it's like the telltale heart. That's all I can think about is this damn bass. Take it off the wall, stick it in the case, put it in the closet. And then I go, what am I going to do with a bass? I'm not a bass player. So I sold the bass to a guy, and the first thing I said, refin. It's an old refinish. And I kept
Emphasizing that.
Yeah.
repeating the narrative, it's a refinish. And he goes, oh, I think it's right. I go, it's a refinish. Tell yourself now, because you're going to find out later.
Yeah.
So he bought it, and now he loves it, because he bought it for what it is, and he can look at it, and he can reconcile it, and he knows what he bought. The problem I had with it was knowing that I made a mistake.
You bought it as this. And
I rarely make mistakes because I'm a pretty shrewd buyer, and I know what I'm looking. I know an old guitar when I see one.
Sparkle's difficult.
It's difficult, and I don't think anybody, dealer or collector, gets out of this thing alive without making a few mistakes along the way. And that was one. But the point of the story is everything in my collection has a good vibe about it. I never argued over price. I never. I certainly, if somebody offers me a guitar for $250, it's worth $25,000, they're going to get a fair price because I can't have that stuff in the collection knowing that I ripped somebody off.
You don't want it in your karma bank.
And one of the things is if you do it with the right intentions, you can look at your collection and be proud of it. And you can pull it out and show people and go, this has got a great story behind it. I remember a story, not to be long-winded, but of a guy who a fan of mine in Rockford, Illinois, drove from Iowa. And he was going to sell me his uncle's lap steel. And I said, okay, $600 for the lap steel, the old Fender thing with a tweed case. I love them,
Yeah.
And he shows up at 4:30, and my tour manager, Clay, says, hey, your friend is here with the lap steel, and he's got a buddy. I'm like, okay. Come downstairs. And the buddy was holding on to the quote-unquote speaker, which was a museum grade with the tag still on it, Fender Tweed Deluxe that went with the
The matching set, yeah.
And he goes, I figured I had the speaker. I figured I'd throw it in. I said, time out. So long story short,
you bought them lunch.
he got $3,500 for his speaker, and he threw in the lap steel for free.
There you go. Well, that makes a good deal.
In this way, I can look at the amp and go, I didn't rip the guy off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and you'll be happy about it every time you see it.
Everybody
as
wins.
To being weird. Yeah.
And since we're talking about this geeky stuff with guitars, I just want to bring up a few other things. I'm friendly with your mom and dad, and I love your family. And your dad had a guitar store.
Yeah.
In Utica.
He did.
That was like a version of my store.
Yeah, it was a used and vintage shop, and. When he started the first store, he had it twice. When he started the first store, it was in a time where things would show up. Things would walk in the front door. Things would show up in the penny saver or the swap sheet. And you could stock a store, go into a guitar show with $10,000. Yeah. You could fill up your truck with $10,000.
I'm old enough to remember those days.
Yeah.
Was your dad a pro musician before he did this, or?
He was a semi-pro weekend player. I had bands and whatever, and he worked day job. And then when I had my career started, he kind of had to kind of
fork in the road.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he had the guitar shop, and it was one of those things where I remember the Joe Nitzik Strat. Joe Nitzik was in his 90s. And in 1954, he went to Forgetta's Music in Utica, New York, and bought the first Fender Strat ever brought to Utica, New York. It was a brand new guitar.
Wow.
Bought it new, and it walked in the front door of my father's shop. And if my father offered him $500, he would have had the guitar.
Yeah.
The fact that he offered him $1,500
scared the guy off.
Told Joe that, and at that point in time, we're talking about a guitar that was maybe worth $7,500, $8,000.
What era are we talking about?
Early 90s.
Okay.
Early 90s. And so I'm like, okay. So I watched the whole thing go down, and Joe, in his 90s, take the guitar and go back to his house. And back in those days, you had a phone book.
Mm-hmm.
6 months later, I call him up. I go, Mr. Nitzik, I'm a kid. Hey, would you sell the guitar? No, really not. Finally, I just drove over and knocked on the front door. Now, in 2019, that would probably get you shot. 1991, it was a little bit more tame in the town. Knocked on the door. I go, Mr. Nitzik, I really want your guitar because it was beautiful. It was, and I never owned a Maple Neck Strat. And so I go, listen, I have $4,500 on me, all the money in the world. And he lets me in the front door, and I go, good sign. And he goes out to the garage. He goes, I just need to get a hand. Can you give me a hand getting the guitar? In the 6 months since we'd seen the guitar, he took it back, and he put it in the garage, and he stacked his tires from his car on top of his So he moved the tires, and he then called his brother, because he couldn't count the money, couldn't see very well. Called his brother, and I sat there for like 3 hours. And his brother, and they started singing and playing like old-timey like polka music. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, this is
getting weird.
This is getting weirder by the minute. So he finally goes, if you're gonna give that guitar a good home, you can have it. So I gave him the money, and I walked out the door. And what that started was that was the original Guitar Safari.
Wow.
Because I didn't buy the guitar that day. I bought the story.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about this.
You've been collecting stories ever since.
I got one for you talking about 54 Strats, though. I mean, and I've never used this line again.
I was going to say, just to wrap that up, I do love that he nicknames all his great guitars, and there's always a story with your stuff. Right?
Always a story.
Yeah. So tell yours now.
So this guy comes into my store, and he's got a minty 54 Strat. Now, this was probably in the late 70s or early 80s. And as soon as he walked in, I looked at the guitar and I kind of was like drooling, and I just said, I've got to have this thing. At the time, probably the best one in the world would have went for $6,500.
Right.
And I just said, I'm just going to punish myself. What the hell? And I offered him $7,500.
Right, pay it forward.
Right. And the guy said to me, $7,500. Some guy offered me $7,500 just for the neck. Right. And so I had to use this line, which cost me that guitar. Right. I never got it. But I said, you know the guy that offered you $7,500 for the neck? That was the second stupidest guy in the world. You know, the first stupidest guy is you for not taking it. Of course, I didn't get the guitar, but, Yeah,
you were out at hello.
Yeah, that was it. But I mean, I knew I wasn't going to get anywhere, and I could have taken his number and maybe called him back, but I thought that was the end of that. But anyhow, I couldn't resist because, I mean, I've had that in the back of my head. A friend of mine told me that a long time ago. My buddy Dan Duran said, that's the second stupidest guy, and you're the first. Yeah. I had to say that to him, and then I kind of went, boy, I'm probably the stupidest guy.
At least the third.
Yeah, I'm right up in there.
Well, one of my favorite lines, because I always tell people, because people know I collect stuff. I have a lot of amps, a lot of guitars, more than I'll ever need in a lifetime. And there's some people that fancy themselves wheeler dealers, and I always tell them, if you're going to come poking around the museum, be prepared to set a record. Because there's a fine line between, like, I'd be crazy to turn this down.
Yeah.
Right.
And, because one of the things is that, my stuff comes in sets. The Tweed amps, it's the best assembly of mint. There's
Tweed
65 mint narrow panel Tweed amps.
Wow.
And the whole set.
I've seen some of them. It's ridiculous.
And I second that. And some of them you got for me.
And some I got for you. There's actually one in the store that needs rescuing. But what I'm saying is the thing about it is when you go, you might, if you're going to sell something to someone, now, because I'm not a guitar dealer, I have to vet you in the sense that I want to make sure that A, this thing doesn't end up on eBay, or B, you're actually going to take care of it and not just throw it in a pile. And because it's my job to preserve this thing.
You're the custodian.
You're the custodian.
And I've done that for a while.
Yeah, and a lot of times, I'll throw out a number and they're like, wow. And I go, well, I paid too much and you can too.
That's the great Joe Bonamassa. I'm here with my buddy Nick Dias and Joe. And I just want to talk a little bit about Joe himself because, I've known Joe for so many years. And again, I've told you about his playing, what I think. And I'm not blowing smoke. I really do believe he's just an unbelievable player, possibly the greatest that ever lived. And but we won't go there.
No.
But as a person, I just want to tell people what kind of guy Joe is. Joe knows that I'm involved with a place called the Midnight Mission.
That's right.
And it's very dear to my heart, and it's helping the homeless. And Joe and I and Nick all know that musicians are people that could be one step away from being homeless, whether it's drugs, alcohol, bad financial decisions. There's so many ways.
With the creativity, doesn't it?
And, when I asked Joe, I mentioned to him, actually, you were with my buddy Richie Sambora in Barcelona. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the first guy that I asked to play for the Midnight Mission was Richie Sambora. And I went down one year and I brought a bunch of toys to the kids. And one of the guys, Orlando Ward, who was a pro basketball player who ran into some hard times and became a patient or a person from the Midnight Mission ended up working for the Midnight Mission. Orlando said, why don't you go in there and hand out these toys? And I was so moved, and it really tore me up that kids had to come down to get a hot meal and a free toy on Christmas Day.
In a city that's probably one of the most wealthy places you
richest,
could ever.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things, we've done these gigs for the Midnight Mission, and I always believe that charity starts at home.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a Los Angelino for 17 years, and it's on our cruises we do a lot. We raise a lot of money for this foundation.
With your foundation,
and that we give away instruments and we give away stuff to schools.
Keeping the blues alive,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
But truth be told, when you take the suit off and the sunglasses and you just strip away, I'm a resident, and what you guys do with the Midnight Mission here is fantastic in a sense because you could see where we'll do a concert or you donate some money. Dollar for dollar goes directly to the people who need it. And
every 96 cents is a balanced meal for the homeless because they buy the food in bulk.
Yeah.
And they serve over 1 million meals a year. And they food and clothe and rehabilitate people. But I was saying in this, what happened was after I gave out the toys, the first person I went to, and he's one of my best friends, and he's also one of the great guys, was Richie Sambora. And I said to Richie, and at the time he was playing with Bon Jovi, and I knew he was very, very busy. And I said, Richard, what would you think about doing a gig, to raise some money for the homeless for the Midnight Mission? And I was waiting for Richie to go, I'm so busy. I'd love to do it, but I can't do it. And Richie was immediately like, yeah, let's do it, man. We could raise a lot of money for the homeless. And I was kind of thrown back. I went, really? Yeah. He said, yeah, man, let's do it. So I talked to some of my other friends who are my customers, Jackson Brown, Los Lobos, the Zen Cruisers, which is the late Doug Feiger and Elliot Easton, who has done one of our podcasts, and Lawrence Druber and his daughter Ilse. We felt like maybe we could make a difference. I mean, you can't really attack the entire problem, but at least we're doing something.
At least you're doing something.
That was the first show you did, right, in Malibu? Yeah, it was fantastic.
And, it's one of those things where you just go, well, if anything, I always say anything either worth doing is not easy. And it has to start somewhere. It has to. You have to start with 96 cents. You know what I mean? Right. And one of the things is for us to play a gig or anybody to do a gig, it's what we do anyway. And the fact that it directly goes to people who need it. And one of the most moving things was we had this the Midnight Mission put on this event, and we went there, and the people who got up that they had helped and spoke. Mm-hmm. So eloquently about being at the very bottom
and so movingly
and rising up and getting themselves out of this situation, and they couldn't have done that without at least
some kind of help.
It's basically a social tourniquet. You have to stop the bleeding. You have to stop the spiral.
Yeah.
To bottom out so you can rise up again. And it was so moving. I just remember being so inspired by the simplest things. And one of the things I took from that evening was, you don't have any real problems, Joe Bonamassa. You don't have any real problems. The things you get spun up about, whether you're doing X, Y, or Z, and to me it's the end of the world because I'm Italian and firing. You don't have any real problems, and it's perspective building in the truest sense.
Everything's perspective, but I think if it's someone that's in a position where you are able to help, and you can do that, I think it's good for everybody all around, especially the musicians, because
if you look at the gigs,
you're put here to play music. The people that pay money that goes to feed the people are there to listen to music. It's a beautiful big circle, really.
The best one was Donnie Bond. For those who he's a friend of ours, very generous. He donates to Midnight Mission. The best Midnight Mission event though was
Donnie Bain.
Donnie Bain. Sorry, I have him mislabeled in my phone. And he's a great guy, and we did this a gig at his house.
Yeah. Right.
And it was with Rick Vito, and there was an auction.
It was great.
And Rick had donated a guitar, a Reverend guitar,
signature model.
His signature model, and they were auctioning it off for the charity. and I don't know, the bidding kind of stalled. Next thing you know, Donnie grabs the mic and he calls out his richest friends by name from the stage, going, "You're not leaving this house until you pony up. I'm not talking to you." And he started pointing at, and I think he got like, it went from like $3,000 to $40,000 in a minute. And I go, "You are the greatest auctioneer of all time."
Absolutely. Well, he knew who his audience was. He was pointing at the people.
Absolutely. And that was I will always remember that. I go, it was at the 11th. They were about to say sold. He goes, "We're not doing this. You. It was great. It was and again, it was like, that $40,000 is, or whatever was raised that night. I mean,
it's 40,000 meals to homeless people. So
well done, Donnie.
So that was really cool. And I've been so blessed to know so many of these guys that really, some people can kind of look at a problem and pretend like it's not there. But when you see people actually stepping up and doing something, I mean, again, whatever little thing that you could do, that's one person that you could help, or that's 10 people or 40,000 people that you could help.
I think one of the not to sound overly pontificous, is that a word?
It is now.
Is
the new dictionary for 2019.
One of the things I think is lacking in society, just in general, is the concept of selflessness. Is giving rather than receiving. We live in a very, just by nature of technology and our phones and it's easy to kind of collapse into your own little bubble, and the only things that matter to you are the things that either inconvenience you or give you that dopamine shot when you look at your Instagram likes. Okay, it's this concept of selflessness is giving back to people that need it and actually need it and actually appreciate it. And it's something that's a little bit lost, and you're starting to see less and less of it. So anytime I can be involved in giving back, I'm a blues guitar player with a wonky last name and a questionable chin. Okay, so at the end of the day, I've done very well in this life playing music that I love and having a great fan base that's gone with me. But it's not lost on me how incredibly lucky I am to be in this position. And I'm grateful. And like you said, you're one twist and turn away in your early 20s from making the wrong decision in your life.
Absolutely.
And you could be in that. You could be on the other side of the line, not handing out toys.
Pretty easily, yeah.
You could. There's only a couple of chess moves away from utter devastation, and it's not lost.
There's been forks in the road for me and for everybody else where one wrong move and it's a whole different story.
Absolutely.
It's giant fork up and we're lost.
That's right. So, I just wanted, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right, go on.
I just wanted you to know what kind of guy Joe is, because, I mean, to me, being a great musician is fantastic, but being a great person 100 years from now, we'll see what anything means, but, Joe is very approachable. People can come up to Joe and talk to him and say, "Hey, Joe, I'm a big fan." And, I always see Joe, taking pictures with people and signing an autograph or talking to people. And, you should be grateful that people actually want that from you.
Absolutely. I especially if I'm in your store and somebody asks me for a picture, or
I've never seen you refuse,
or autograph a CD, and chances are I'm either holding a guitar case or an amp, and I make the direct correlation. I didn't pay for this amp.
Well, I've seen you do
that. The fans
that.
paid for it because they buy the records and
I've seen you do that with a teenager that was actually trying a guitar out next door in our store. And this kid sort of looking at Joe and looking around and going, "What do I do?" And Joe goes, took the guitar from him, played some amazing lick, handed it back and said, "Yeah, that sounds good. You should buy that."
You should buy it? I would be good on the sales floor. I'm an old guitar dealer from way back. My father raised me right. And that's my default position. I'll come work for Norm if my career ends. But
you make
the job's open.
Good.
I don't know if I can afford you, but the job's open.
Well, one of the things about guitar buying is in the industry in general. It's the search for the Holy Grail. It's the search of if I only had this, or if I only had that, if I only had this. And what so a lot of times what a lot of people don't realize is if I handed this guitar to Eric Clapton, he would sound like Eric Clapton. If I handed this guitar to you, you'd sound like you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But what I'm saying is the sound and the tone and the
It's the
musicianship.
player.
It starts within.
Yeah.
And these are conduits and tools. Like you need everybody should have a Fender Strat in their arsenal if they're an electric guitar player. Everybody should have a Tele. Everybody should have a Les Paul thing.
That's
A 335 thing.
Yeah.
An arch top thing. Because when a carpenter needs a hammer, a Phillips head screwdriver, a flathead
saw.
screwdriver, a saw, and that's the direct correlation. So
that's how you get the finished product.
But we deal in the addiction business.
Yeah.
Okay, we're in the addiction business. I'm the guitar addict, and you're servicing the guitar addict. And the thing is, you don't need all this stuff, but it's great.
It's nice to have it. And there's always that question of, I see this with people who go, if only I had that 57 Strat, I'd sound fantastic. I'd sound like Eric Clapton.
Well, it's
They buy
kind
the
of a
Strat
goal.
and they don't,
It's
so
something that you can kind of aim at and work towards and
They
all
move
that.
on to
you know,
something
so.
else. But it's fun
Well,
to have
one
a
of the
nice
things-
one of everything.
One of the most commonly asked questions is why old guitars, Joe? It's like listen, you can be a Squire Strat, Fender
Yeah.
DeVille.
Oh, yeah. Well, who do we
$500
know who plays a Squire Strat and kills it?
Jack Pearson.
Yeah.
Speaking,
On the
we're
Blues
talking
Cruise.
about the blues cruises, that we did before. Joe has introduced a lot of these people and trying to give a lot of these people a leg up and get them known to the guitar fanatic public and all that.
Right.
And I've been on the cruise and there's like 20 acts on there and I'm dead, ready to go to sleep. I could barely walk and I walked by this one venue on the ship and this guy's just playing and I'm going, who the hell is this guy? And I had never really heard of him, and my bad. And I'm listening to him, and he's a great player and singer. And, one of my buddies leans over to me and says, you see what he's playing? I go, yeah, Strat. We were standing kind of a little far back. He goes, that's a Squire Strat. That's like a $150, $200 guitar.
Yeah.
And I'm going, well, that pretty much blows everything that I've ever stood for my whole life,
But you told everybody that story
I
when you
did.
came back. He wouldn't stop going on about this guy, and he was playing a Squire.
He sat in with us 2 nights at the Ryman.
Yeah.
Because he sat in one night, and I was like, Jack, you want to come back for the next night? Yeah, sure. So he brought both of his guitars. He brought the Squire Strat on the Friday, and he brought the Squire Tele on the Saturday. And when we were doing Reese's record, he played on Reese's record. And I, just for show and tell, I brought down one of the Epiphone Amoses.
Yeah, fantastic
and
guitars.
They're great guitars. Little did I know today, of all days, caused a little bit of controversy.
I know, I saw that. I like that.
I had to remind some boutique guitar maker to shut the fuck up every
Yeah.
once in a while. Sorry, I
were
didn't
right.
mean to swear on this thing, but it bears repeating.
Yeah.
Anyway, doesn't matter. I brought the guitar down, and just had it in the room, and he was on it.
Yeah.
Like, he goes, what's this? And he goes, man, this would be great for my jazz gig. Can I get one? And I said, Jack, you know what? How about this? Take it. Sure. I said, you could take it, and on one condition. I said, I want a video and a picture of you playing a flying V at a jazz gig. He goes, so next week I get a picture. He's rocking the Epiphone, playing straight up bebop.
Really?
With the V.
With
and
the
I
V.
go, that's worth
Of course.
a picture's worth 1,000 words.
I love this guy already.
And he's one of those once in a lifetime talents. I mean, Jack also played with the Allman Brothers after Dickie left in '95. Jack is a national treasure. I'll tell you who else comes on our cruise on a regular basis. You've had him on the podcast is Josh Smith.
Oh, God.
Josh, we did a podcast with Josh. Now, again, of all the guitar players, you always say that there's one guitar player who scares the hell out of me.
Right. Be Josh and Kirk Fletcher.
Kirk is another one.
And on our boat, a lot of some artists, like I don't know if they get rubbed the wrong way or whatever. They always ask, or they see me, they go, man, you always have Josh and Kirk and stuff like that. How do you get invited on the boat? And I go, well, it's nepotism. These are my friends. I go,
right. These are guys you hang with.
Charity starts at home. I mean, I go. The whole excuse of the boat, above and beyond the charity event and getting together and just doing it, is I get to, for at least 4 or 5 days at a time, I get to hang with my friends, which I never get to do.
Which is nice, yeah.
And we've had, I tell you, some of the standouts. Larkin Poe is always great.
Chris Kane.
Chris Kane
I'll tell you, I
devastating.
had never heard Chris play. I heard his name a few times. It was everybody in the boat was talking about Chris Kane.
And he's just a monster. And
have you got Eric Gales on this?
Eric.
We got Eric Gales, and he's another monster.
He's another guy like Joe. I can just sit and watch for hours, mesmerizing.
We had this past cruise. We had Peter Frampton, who was fantastic.
Oh, really?
Playing and singing is better than he's ever. I mean, it was the best Peter Frampton show I've ever seen, and I used to tour with him.
And you were a Humble Pie fan as well.
I'm a Humble Pie fan.
Yeah.
And Peter Frampton was great. Kenny Wayne Shepherd was great.
Mm-hmm.
Larkin Poe was great. I mean, Eric Gales killed it. So it was a really, it's a good. It's
Our
a good.
own Sarah Rogo.
Sarah Rogo's on in the spring. It's one of those things. It's if you to me, it's like it's always good to put people out there in front of an audience that they're obviously if you're going to come to a Joe Bonamassa blues cruise and you're not a Joe Bonamassa fan, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay, because you're going to get a free bobblehead, like it or not. Okay, so and a beach towel. So the thing is, it's like,
That's
but
funny.
the concept is room for everybody, and
Yeah.
and I know what my fans like. They like guitar and they like it loud and they like it electric. So if you can help some of these artists, at least
Expose them. to the
2,700
public.
people at a crack, expose them to
And
a different audience.
everybody should hear Josh Smith because he's phenomenal.
He is
I mean,
incredible, and Kirk and all these guys that we talk. There's one thing that I just wanted to talk about because I thought it was rather funny. You had James Hunter play two
James
times,
Hunter,
and
six.
James Hunter is like one of my favorites. A buddy of mine, came up to me who knows me real well, and said, "Yeah, you got to check this out." And I went, I'm not that crazy about a lot of the new music. He says, "No, you need to
You gotta
check
see
this
James,
out."
yeah.
James Hunter his tunes are incredible. It's sort of like early 60s R&B, pre-Beatles. The guy is phenomenal, but he's such a nut and a funny character.
Well,
I'll
he's
never
He's
forget
a
this.
character, yeah.
He's setting up in the atrium to play, and they're doing a sound check. And he's got the, they're working on the vocal mics and stuff like that. And Joe kind of hears that there's like a little too much high end or something like that. And Joe walks up to the sound guy and says, "Hey, man, could you kind of roll the highs off back a little bit?" James Hunter didn't even know who Joe was.
No.
And he goes, "Hey, who are you telling the sound guy?" I said, "This is the guy that put on the cruise right here. This is the guy you're working for." But he didn't get it. But James Hunter was so fantastic.
He didn't recognize me in the green jumper.
Yeah.
And what I had a good rap with him one time about I'm like, where does this come from, James? Because he's British. And
I used to see him in London when he was called Howlin' Wilf.
yeah, and he always plays this reissue
Les Paul special.
Les Paul special, and it's been re-necked. And I said, wow, because I played it. This was in San Jose. We did a festival gig, and he was showing me the guitar. And I go, what happened to the original neck? Just making conversation. He goes, "Oh, I had to hit somebody over the head with it."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, it makes sense." You know,
Yeah.
I mean, So, but he's on our next one, and he's on our next.
I'm glad.
And you know what? The thing about James is anything I do to help him, I really think he's a superstar in waiting. To me, that guy should be packing out performing arts centers and theaters all over the world.
I agree.
Because
100%.
He's the real thing.
He's the real
Everybody
thing. Yeah,
that I've
absolutely.
turned on to James Hunter has gone bananas and loves him. I had one couple that went on the cruise. As soon as I told them James Hunter was going, we're on. Let me make the phone call and we get it. The guy, and the thing is like his guitar sound is the anti everything that most young people are looking for guitars. It's a very clean sound.
Because of wild.
Yeah, very wild
vibrato.
vibrato, and his rhythm playing is incredible.
Yeah.
But the thing about James Hunter is that when you hear him play one measure, you know
it's
that's
him.
James Hunter.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many guys that you go, well, it sounds like 200 other guys.
Right.
This guy sounds like himself, and it's
Yeah,
like
in
hearing
the-
Ray
in the
Charles
same way-
sing or Aretha Franklin sing.
Yeah, or the same way you hear John Lee Hooker playing. It's the
B.B.
same.
King,
It's the
yeah.
same thing. He's the real thing.
What-
But that's one of the nice things about your cruise and the way you pick the artists and mentioning people like Larkin Poe,
Yeah.
who, if you haven't, they are phenomenal.
Terrific.
I mean, also,
real deal, yeah.
Also
Marcus
the
King.
real
Marcus
deal.
King,
Marcus
yeah.
King
Another one,
is
yeah.
just
Marcus King is
fabulous.
going to get too big to be on our boat because he's like about to explode. I really think
He's unbelievable.
I always thank him. I go, dude, you're you're the heir apparent, man. You're the future of this thing.
What do you think about Kingfish?
I think he's great as well. I think both him and Marcus, that represents the future of this of
They're
this genre.
We've got a guy standing in this room who
That's right.
He
Also
won
in a green jumper, by the way.
Also in a green jumper, yeah.
Guitar blues contest that Guitar Center. I don't discriminate against any other stores they put on, and he won the contest. And yesterday he was in the store and we were talking, and he told me he won the contest, and somehow Joe's name came up, and I said, Joe's going to be here. And Rob said his name is Rob Geringer, and Rob is playing with a lot of the top hip hop artists, from Eminem to Cardi D to
Kendrick Lamar.
Just on and on. He's the young guy, and this guy can really play. But, when I told him Joe Bonamassa was coming in, he went, oh, can I come in and meet Joe? I said, you come in, you can listen in on this podcast. And this kid can really play.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
And you heard his video. We did a couple videos.
One of the things that's most encouraging is I think at this point, there's always a conversation like guitar's dead. It's really not.
Nowhere near.
And the amount of young people under the age of 25 that are out there shredding. I mean, like in all genres.
Yeah.
Playing killer rhythm stuff, and the depth of knowledge that they have far surpassed anything.
Did you hear the video with the Stanley brothers, the two twins?
Yeah.
Those kids can really play. I mean, they came in when they were 13, when they were 14, now they're 15, and they're really playing. I mean, they're playing voicings, they're playing, all kinds of cool stuff. I mean, these kids are not just, phoning it in. They're doing it.
One of the things, though, is, in my opinion, when I began my solo career 25 years ago, I've been doing this 30 years, but I really, as Drop the Smoking and now Joe Bonamassa. And there was a farm system in place, a.k.a. places to play all around the country, where if you drew 25, 30, 40 people, it kind of felt full, and there were some tables, and you were able to go out on.
That was like your proving ground.
Well, it's also financially you could work yourself from Los Angeles to New York and do 40 shows all through the country in this farm system. What I'm seeing now is a little bit disturbing is a lot of those places that I used to play in the late 90s and early 2000s are gone. They closed, or they just, now they're Sephora's or Starbucks. And, and the younger generation now what's becoming big, they're throwing gigs at houses, because there's no other places to play.
Exactly.
House party gigs. And I worry sometimes that there's not a farm system in place to really nurture young talent because you need a place to play.
Yeah.
Not everybody can just wake up and go, I'm going to play the Greek Theater. Well, there's going to be 40 people there, but you could play.
Even if it's a 6-inch stage, it gives you a sense of what you're supposed to be doing.
One of the things is theory and reality. It's practical application of the things that you learn in your bedroom. Mm-hmm. Now, there are a lot of Instagram guitar players, and they do or YouTube
bedroom
stars
guitar very well,
or whatever they. But one of the things that's not talked about in any of those applications is practical applying it in terms of a band. Now you can sit there and play with a drum machine or a track all day long. The minute you get there with a live drummer, and it's once it starts for real with a live drummer and a live band, and it comes fast and furious in front of an audience, your chops get honed, and you get a different perspective of. And you improve as a player.
That's where your
amazingly,
education starts. Yeah.
And that's one of the things that worries me. It's like having the opportunity to woodshed for the younger generation, because that's a critical step in allowing them to get to this second, third, fourth tier, and ultimately fulfilling the goals.
Back in the day, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you experienced this, but when guys tell me now, I got a gig, it's one set, it's like a showcase. I go, man, when we used to play when I was younger, it was 5 or 6 sets a night, and you had to repeat tunes, and within a week the band would get tight because you were like. It was a lot of gigs in one. Yeah. Now they're doing one set, and they go, "Man, I'm so beat. That was such a great,
Right, they win a singing contest
like,
Yeah.
So,
Well,
There you go. Good. You're on again in 15 minutes.
Well, how do you think these things got so beat up?
Yeah, exactly,
They wore the neck out because you're playing 2-3 sets a night. Well, one of the critical steps in any career trajectory is understanding pacing of a show.
Yeah.
Now, I can write a set list. We do an evening with. All our shows are evening with, and we start at 8 o'clock, and generally by 10:10 we're done.
Yeah.
Now, I can write a set list. We play straight through, no break. I can write a set list that makes those 2 hours and 10 minutes feel like 45 minutes.
I've seen you do it.
I can also write a set list and have written set lists that make it seem like a perpetual march through the jungle, without any sign of food, water, or shelter. And that's, it's a skill, and it's a show, and it's you can take a lot by watching a movie. Everything has an act 1, an act 2, and a finale. Like how does act 1, James Bond, Aston Martin, Pretty Girl. Act 2, villain, eye patch, Monte Carlo,
Act 3,
casino. Act 3, girl, Aston Martin now
Plot
in
twist.
the air, or some sort of oil slick.
The plot twist.
Or some he's in a cage now. It looks like he's done. There's
One of the best
methodology to it.
paced shows I've seen was your last one at the Hollywood Bowl.
Thank you.
With that, I mean, your band is phenomenal. How's Anton doing? Is his foot better?
His foot is he's getting there. He'll be back in October.
I mean, the band were just such fantastic musicians in their own right. But the way you've obviously done that with all those players in mind, and it just worked so beautifully. And that was one of those shows that I was like, where the hell did that 2 hours go?
It spread the love around a little bit.
playing with the same musicians over and over again there's such a communication that you guys have with the band. He's got the finest players in the world. They're all great guys. I mean, everybody in your organization, from your manager Roy to Mike to everybody. I mean, really cool. But using the same guys, I mean, that's quite a concept, because most bands these days or whatever, every time you see them, it's a different thing. I mean, you have other setups, but you have your main band that you use all the time.
Very lucky. I mean, this band has over 550 shows on it since 2015. 2014 is when the concept of the big band started. And so, 500 gigs. Now, one of the things about it is a band like that, of the caliber of musicians, is not cheap. It's incredibly expensive to tour the way I do. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, I know online I get a lot of crap about ticket prices, and we try to keep them as reasonable as we can.
You're carrying those giant trucks
I have
and all
3
that
trucks,
kind of stuff.
Big trucks.
4 buses, and the buses are full.
But you know what? That band sounds expensive. From Paulie Sarah to Mahalia Barnes, it's
and you know what? I owe it to the fans to serve up the best gig, start to finish. And I like also surrounding myself with players and musicians that are better than me, because I think it forces you to raise your game. If you're the weak link, you're gonna tighten up quick. And that's been the methodology. I mean, I learned that from watching guys like Eric Clapton. I mean, Clapton always had Gadd or Steve Ferroni, Nathan East, and Andy Fairweather Low.
Yeah.
Top players.
And you know what? One of the things is it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
But you come away from a show like that saying you've not just seen Eric Clapton, you've just seen absolutely one of the best bands as an ensemble you'll ever see, which is the thing you get at your shows as well, which is really nice.
I try to do it. I really try to do it.
They're waving us off a little bit for time, so listen, I did want to talk way more about your live shows and about your vocals in particular, which is one of my favorite things. And a lot of musical stuff that we're not going to get time for. Can we? I know you've got a plane to catch this afternoon.
We're going to have to do a part 2 of this.
We'll do a part. Yeah, absolutely.
When you're back in town, that'd be great.
The hardest thing I do, just to keep it short, the hardest thing I do on a weekly basis when I'm on tour is singing. It's so predicated on your general energy level, what you're feeling. God forbid you had a head cold. It's the hardest thing to maintain because of it's really indelibly linked to how your body's feeling. Now, 5 shows in. Now, if I'm feeling good, I sing all day long. Doesn't matter. If you're feeling bad, that's when you earn your money, because at the end of the day,
if you're tired or
mostly if you're feeling sick or ill, it
Yeah.
affects your head voice, it affects your singing voice. And what you try to do is you just go, I just need to maintain this thing, and you learn how to sing. You know,
Yeah.
it's singing should be no different than talking, only in pitch. And if you do it correctly and you channel the head voice. I when I was 28, I used to be able to gargle Jack Daniels, smoke cigars, chase women, and that was all in one evening.
Knock it out in the evening, yeah.
And play a gig, And I started to lose my voice, and I went to a vocal coach called, his name is Ron Anderson. He's here in town, and Ron basically said, okay, here's what I can tell you. You don't know anything about singing, do you? I said, well, I was trained as a kid. It's like, you don't know anything about singing, do you? So for the next 3 or 4 years, I go there religiously, and I'm like, man, we're just doing the same scales every day, and all of a sudden it just clicked, and I go, I get it. And he helped me find what you call head voice. And now the difference between 28 and 42. Now I'm supposed to be able to sing. Now is where you start ducking the melodies and you can't hit the high notes. I sing almost an octave higher now than I did when I was 28.
Wow.
Which is insane because age should catch up to you, and it hasn't, and I 100% owe it all to Ron Anderson and a great doctor here in town named Joe Sugarman, Dr. Joseph Sugarman, who was Frank Sinatra's ear, nose, and throat guy, and he was the one, because I had a nodule, and he goes, I'm not going to operate on you. You're going to go learn how to sing, and you're going to come back in 6 months. And I came back in 6 months, and it was gone. He goes, see? Now you owe me $170. Thank you. Copay.
Well, they did a fantastic thing, because one of the things, talking about the last time I saw you, and especially all the footage from the Beacon Theatre, your singing's getting so good it also makes you forget about the guitar playing.
Hey, listen, listen. I that's why I got all those flashing lights, smoke machines, dancing girls. I got to distract. It's a whole concept.
Well, one thing that I do know is that I always wanted Joe and Richie Sambor to get together, and I know they were both in Barcelona.
Randomly.
And you guys got a chance to really get to know each other. Richie's a great guy.
Great guy, and fellow guitar geek. So we just kind of geeked out about gear and so he gave me some.
But you were smoking cigars.
I was.
Right?
I was.
There you go.
was
I've seen
cigar.
that many a time, so I'm going to report you.
My thing is if I can't hit the high note the next day, the cigars go. So luckily, since I've picked up the bad habit, I can hit the high notes, and I'm like, nothing. Between the Diet Coke, I got to kill myself somehow. Yeah. Norm, thank you for having me, by the way.
Well, let me tell you, thank you so much, and it's great hearing all these things from you. I just wanted to throw one little anecdote in, is that Nick used to see when I used to play, and when I was playing, people would tell me, Norm, if I was in jail and I had, they were giving me, one day to the electric chair, I'd want to see it with you playing. And they would say that to me because they said, because every minute will seem like an eternity. So that's my buddy Kenny Salton's line. I couldn't resist. So, but anyhow, it's my honor.
We're gonna.
I gotta go work the floor. I'm gonna do a guitar of the day for you now, and I'm gonna do some sales.
I know, and then you've got to get on a plane, right?
So
we got to part two this, please.
Yeah.
Next time you're in town, when you got a little bit of time, because there's so much I want to.
Yeah, Beth Hart and all these other people.
We'll do another song.
Yeah.
So
thanks,
you guys have to stay tuned. Remember that the podcast will be every Tuesday starting September 17th, and it will go on. And the 1 week following, the video will air exclusively on the All Guitar Network. So, they're both free. You go to wherever you get your podcasts, Apple or wherever you do that, you can get signed up for that. And the All Guitar Network is free also. You just go to the App Store and sign up for that. So it's really a cool thing. And I'm so honored to have my buddy Joe.
Yeah,
I really feel like it's family.
Your nephew.
And I'm sorry, my nephew. And I'm sorry that I always bug you and say, Joe, would you do this? Would you do that? And he always accommodates. He's like the best. So, and if you're out and you see that Joe Bonamassa is playing someplace, if you don't go to see him, you're missing the greatest maybe that ever lived, in my opinion, no. And at the peak of his career. Sorry about the, blowing smoke, but I really believe it's true. I don't really think anybody can touch you for the style that you do.
Thank you.
And so you really need to go see Joe, and if you can make it on one of those blues cruises, it's the greatest. So Till next time, thank you guys. Love you guys for listening and watching. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks,
we'll
guys.
We'll see you
Thank
for
you.
part 2.
No.